Smell that. Two-stroke.
Yep.
It's a miracle that Dad is actually still working into his later life.
This is going straight to the pool.
You should use it, Dad.
If you had asked people in the mid-90s, is Dad going to be one of the last actors left standing in Australia, no one would have picked it. Nobody.
I think Michael's career has endured for two reasons: talent and persistence. Don't give up, don't let go, keep going.
We're off to Shanghai Express and Kung Pao chicken.
I don't think there are many other Australian actors that have the range that Michael has. A lot of actors can play serious drama. Very few have the comic skills that Michael has, and he can do both. That head of his comes from growing up in country Queensland and by living a hard life.
I know that he loves a glass of whiskey or two or three or four at the end of a day. And I think it's masking something, you know, a vulnerability, a sensitivity. That vulnerability, though, is something that really enriches the roles that he plays because he can access that and bring it to the screen.
Hey, Sarah!
I'm at that time in my life where the eyes are playing up, the lungs are playing up, the balance is not as good as it was, and you're realising that it's all downhill from here and that you're not going to get another lap. You know, you're in the straight. I think the whole thing is to do as much good as you can while you can.
There's a track grinding back along an old familiar track of the road to Narrabri. Oh, we haven't lost a thing, have we?
Michael just represents the great Aussie battler, I guess.
I think we need to build up our repertoire.
His role in the castle has set him up as this guy who wants to protect his little patch against the big forces of government and industry.
It's not a house, it's a home. A man's home is his castle.
The castle is about the big end of town trying to push the little man off his land.
You just can't walk in and steal our home.
And the little guy takes him to the highest court and he wins.
Let's stick it up.
The castle has become a magnet for people to identify with. Tell them they're dreaming. What about the Serenity? It's all that stuff, you know. We're going to Barney Doon. And I think it's seeped in that you don't let the big fella walk all over you.
Two drifters off to see the world.
A lot of people worry about the fact that if they stand up for something, they're not going to get a role and that it might jeopardise their career. Michael just doesn't care about that. He's got nothing to lose.
When he talks about he wants to make a difference, I think he's talking quite clearly about the environment. The environment is where every one of us lives, breathes, eats, drinks and dreams, and that's what he wants to make a difference to.
We've had quite a few shops shut during the drought. My heckles get up a little bit when I get people from the city trying to tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. But I welcome Michael Caton to town. He's an icon in Australia, and I look forward to the debates we can have with our differing views.
Well, when Dad was a toddler, my grandfather, the first Septimus, died in a workplace accident. He was pulled into a piece of machinery, giving a safety induction of all things. It suddenly meant that Dad was the only male of the family. So he had this very doting mother and these two doting sisters, and suddenly he was the little prince. And I do think that that's sort of where the performer was born.
When Dad was killed at Billawheeler, we moved back to Longreach, Queensland for a couple of years. All our family were there. After that, we went to Brisbane and Mum opened a shop. But all my life, I would go back to the bush.
When Dad was a young teenager, he went to a boarding school in Gympie, about 2 hours north of Brisbane.
I majored in school concerts and failed all my exams. But it was the most wonderful experience.
As a young actor in Brisbane, there was pretty much only one place you could work, and that was the 12th Night Theatre. And that's where he first met Jack Thompson. And at that time, Dad was selling windmills. Jack was a soldier.
There was a production that both of us were in the middle of this dark, dark play. The theatre was in uproarious laughter suddenly. And I don't know, what is that? I went into the wings and looked out, and there was Michael. Just had the whole theatre in stitches. It was wonderful, his timing and his sense of comedy was wonderful.
Jack moved from Brisbane to Sydney first. It would have been about 68. And then I followed a couple of years later.
We lived in a 3-story terrace house in Jersey Road. Wallara, at that stage, was still quite bohemian.
This house was just like boho central. And I went there when I was about 6 or 7 to have French lessons with one of the boarders. Michael was one of them. But my eyes and mind were being blown by everything else I was seeing around me, which was, you know, actors, artists, bohemians everywhere. It was just such an exciting place to be.
Jack Thompson and his partner Leah were always instrumental in sort of educating Dad in a way around food, books, theatre, politics, all those sort of things. Little by little, they opened the world to him.
I remember when Jack did the centerfold for Cleo, and I came down expecting to have a cup of tea and a piece of toast. And there's all cameras set up in the lounge room, and Jack's on the chaise lounge.
And just as he was about to take the photograph, Michael's head appeared around the door. Oh, sorry. Hello.
What's happening? Are you auditioning for Father Christmas? How are you, darling?
My father didn't have a brother, he has Jack.
Good to feel you.
I think it's this shared spirit, this shared love of being out bush, this shared love of so many things. I think they have a very deep connection.
And you said, I'm a soldier.
They are always there for each other.
You said, what do you do? And I said, I sell windmills.
Dad's only had a couple of real jobs other than actor. He was a wool broker, and then he sold Comet windmills. From that point on, he's had this passion and fascination for irrigation and underground aquifers.
When I was 22, I got a job with Comet windmills. It was in the middle of a terrible drought. There was no surface water left, and all that was left was the artesian basin, which naturally flows, and the sub-artesian basin, which is down 100 to 300 feet, which you have to pump. And I realised that the most important thing is not gold or silver, it's water. And without that, the Australian grazing industry and a lot of the farmers are buggered.
I love a sunburned country.
Land of sleeping swains, of drought and doubts and dangers, of trouts and flooding drains.
Oh, I've known Nell since she was an ankle biter. And then in 2014, I think it was, we caught up at an environmental launch against gas and coal mining and decided to join forces with the farmers.
I think we're probably old rat bags, you know, we're plot thickeners, we're shit stirrers, perhaps. And that's the glue that binds us.
Michael is very passionate about the environment, and he always has been.
We're taking you back to explore Narrabri.
Michael and Nell have been campaigning against coal seam gas in northwest New South Wales.
Santos is proposing a large coal seam gas project in the Narrabri and Pilliga region. Well, many farmers are opposing it because they believe extracting the gas could deplete the underground water supply and possibly contaminate it.
The project is supposed to supply up to half of New South Wales gas needs. Well, Narrabri Shire is very much in support of the project. Coonamble Shire isn't.
We're here to talk to people who are both for and against coal seam gas.
The Narrabri Gas Project is proposed to drill up to 850 wells. About 60% of them will be in the Pilliga forest and about 40% on surrounding farmland.
Margaret, I'm Nell.
Margaret, I presume.
A local community group has just started a case against the Independent Planning Commission's decision to approve the Narrabri Gas Project.
What a wonderful spot.
I know.
What a drive. Are we right in the heart of the Pilliga here? You know, people just call the Pilliga scrub, a bit of a wasteland, you know, something that's not worth protecting. But it is actually a recharge area for the Great Artesian Basin.
The basin's massive. It underlies 22% of Australia's continent, and the recharge area is the only points of entry for the water for the whole basin. Very limited areas have recharge, and we're on one right now in the middle of the Pilliga.
There's water everywhere. It's seeping down through the sandstone back to where we want it.
And we have the proposed Narrabri Gas Project threatening that by drilling through a crucial recharge area to coal seams well below, and then needing to extract gigalitres of water that's toxic to plant and other life forms. I think as soon as you move west of the Great Divide, you just find people reliant on groundwater. We don't have high rainfall. We don't have the surface water that we can use.
All my mob up in Longreach, it was the same story.
Many of these communities facing coal seam gas are really quite beleaguered by all of this. When Michael tips up, it's like, yes, we have support. Someone believes in us. Someone is standing beside us.
Hi Adam, how are you, mate?
And he really does give them renewed energy to continue that fight.
Great to see you. Welcome.
Same to you, Adam.
Yeah.
Same to you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
G'day, kids.
Hey, welcome.
Lovely to meet you.
Cattle farmers Rowe and Adam McRae have been fighting the proposal for nearly a decade.
The community simply can't function without that artesian water because it's our only permanent, secure source of fresh water. One coal seam gas well will use thousands of litres of water every single day. Now you put 850 of those across one of the key recharge zones of the Great Artesian Basin and you could have a depletion issue.
So is that the spot though where the pipeline's going to go?
Yes.
The McRaes are upset about a proposed pipeline that runs right through their property carrying the gas.
If it takes out of our business one of our major farming paddocks, we're looking at, you know, not being profitable or viable as a business. What alternative do we have then to fight?
I really do worry for you.
People really connect with him. People relate to him, you know? They really relate to the characters that he's played. Because often he just plays the average Aussie bloke.
My dad has always been sort of a journeyman actor. He was always the guy in the background, the good friend. And then all of a sudden, he got Uncle Harry in the Sullivans, and that really changed his life.
It'd be a better world. Competition brings out the best in a man if he's capable.
Harry.
The Sullivans was that big leap, because I hadn't done a lot of film. And there you are, learning how to act in front of a couple of million people every week.
What are you doing in there, Harry?
Oh, well, I'm stuck.
You fell in?
Uncle Harry was the ne'er-do-well uncle that always had schemes. And people just identified with him. They all knew someone like Harry.
You sure you're not a bit too overdressed, mate?
Oh, for the judge. No, I got the bag of fruit, mate. I thought I might bail some water out of the shelter first.
He became a household name. It wasn't Michael Caton, it was Harry. But that's what happens. You are known as the character.
Michael, that's him.
And so you lose your anonymity.
You got me. And then you discovered fame. And I think in the back of your mind, you'd always wanted fame. I'll be famous. And then when fame happens, and like most comedy people, you're a bit paranoid. You think everyone's looking at you, and they are.
You got something happening.
Yeah, I'll get over your shoulder.
I actually sort of became really self-conscious.
I mean, we're in a bumper season now, the Castlereagh's running.
Well, the period after the Sullivans, I remember it being a very hard time. I remember that he was unemployed a lot. And that for an actor can be soul-crushing. I was about 3 or 4 when my parents split up. There were times when Mum wasn't getting the child support checks.
When you're absolutely broke and your son's mum is struggling and you can't keep your end of the bargain up, it was just, it just flattens you, really. I hadn't worked for 12 months and I'd been in a really black depression. And for the first time, I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I didn't drink for 12 months. I saw a lovely psychiatrist and I did a lot of work on myself. I just turned to writing and I thought, well, it's all over.
I was just getting into NIDA and Dad said, I'm off to Melbourne to shoot this little film.
Dad, radar.
11-day shoot, $3,000, but decades of career after it. That's the real payment at the castle.
How much did that cost?
$70.
Just paid for itself.
The castle publicly elevated Michael from a well-known actor to a star of the new Australian cinema. That movie, his character, is there, has entered the language. You know, oh, okay, straight to the pool room. Tell them they're dreaming.
I was a last-minute replacement for the castle. Oh, I changed everything. Prior to that, I was like the old couch in the corner, a bit dusty and faded and jaded. And then all of a sudden, it all opened up again. It started, it was a complete resurgence. It was just wonderful.
How's this, boys? Woohoo! What do you call this?
Chicken.
Yeah, but it's got something sprinkled on it.
Seasoning.
As a matter of fact, my wife cooked up a beautiful chicken soup last night, and I said, darling, this is beautiful. What's this called? Hello, Michael.
How are you, Ron?
Welcome to Narrabri.
Lovely to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, mate. I'm a
you.
big fan. Here in Narrabri, all of our water is artesian water. So, we survive on that.
So, you don't have any fears about pollution of that?
Oh, personally, no, I don't. And generally the community doesn't, because we're very well educated as a community in the safe extraction of coal seam gas.
You have absolutely no doubt that there can be no pollution of the underground water.
Where is there 100% guarantee in anything we do? Gas, don't forget, is a clean energy. I support it because it gives opportunity to young people, it gives opportunity to business, whether it be directly or indirectly, and we don't get those opportunities in the bush very often.
But you also have sub-artesian water here.
Look, the reason about 90% of the farmers are opposed to this is all our rivers are underground. That is why they don't want coal seam gas. They don't want to see that river polluted. Because once you scramble that egg, you can't unscramble it.
But here you go, down here. I have complete and utter faith in Santos and their operations. The inner casing, science tells us that it's safe.
But you still got the concrete.
I can see that all scientists aren't agreeing, but we can only go on our independent scientists that are provided to us. We can't just sit on our hands and rely on solar power or wind power or things like that. They're not going to cut it at this stage.
And Rod and I have been arguing the toss this morning.
We've had a very robust and interesting conversation. It's been a pleasure.
I don't think, in terms of the conversation with the Mayor of Narrabri, that either of us really changed where we stand.
Michael is, like all really great actors, the idiosyncratic personality, and you do need to know how to talk to Michael and also how to challenge him too, because Michael can be, you know, quite intimidating when he wants to.
Oh, you hate mess, Paul. You told me so 1,000 times. And it doesn't get any messier than a black woman holding the hand of a dying white fellow who can't even wipe his own ass.
The last few films he's made, especially the films with Jeremy, he's brought out different sides of himself. He's going deeper inside himself now for his roles.
It's hard. What is? You killed yourself. It's really f***ing hard.
The Last Cab to Darwin is a film about a guy who discovers he's dying.
There it is. There it is.
I don't think many people knew that Michael could be a dramatic lead actor at that time, but I was absolutely convinced he could do it. I knew there was a kind of a darker, more introverted and complicated side to Michael.
Oh, you smell good.
In the end, it's impossible to imagine that role in that film done with anybody else doing it. And he won the Best Actor award, and it changed a lot of things for Michael.
I was raised a Catholic, but I've rejected Catholicism. But its imprint is on me. And I have darker things in my psyche.
You want him to kill my ram?
Dad always draws on his own life for his films.
Murderer! Come out here, you weak prick!
Rams is about two brothers. Dad plays the angry, bitter, old drunk. And if you've known Dad long enough, you know he does like a drink. And then when he does a drink, that's when he gets really passionate. Yeah, we got to change the bloody world. We got to save. You know, that's where that side of Dad can come from. So I think Jeremy saw that.
You think I'm going to listen to you? You think I'm going to listen to you, you weak
The reason
prick?
I thought Michael could do it was because it would be fun to explore the side of him that, you know, that can have one or two too many drinks sometimes.
Everything's going to be okay.
Well, Jeremy knows me. Look, I'm not pure white. I'm not black. I live a life, and I live it to the full. Try not to be too destructive of myself.
Righto. Righto.
Michael likes a drink, but he's nothing in comparison to the character that he plays in Rams. So I hope everybody knows that.
Nice to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you too, Michael. We've got a small mob of sheep here. They're actually Australian whites.
Mate, you better go and see Rams.
Have you seen Rams?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Enjoyed that too. Yeah. I hope I can convince Michael that coal seam gas is not a big enemy, that it is something that's good for the community. Young fellas leaving town has been a problem for many years. I've got no qualms about digging for gas and being a problem with the water.
I worry a bit about the long-term effect. The pressure will be on Australia to rein that in come 2050.
We've got to do it now because the gas is there to be taken and I think we should use it. I think the amount of emissions that Australia makes is so minuscule that it's not going to make the slightest bit of difference at all. My view is that climate's always been changing. None of the predictions of the climate change people that I've seen have come true.
Our next stop is to visit David Chadwick. He's got a massive feedlot in Coonamble sustained by solar energy.
We use about 100 megalitres of water. An animal on a really hot day will drink about up to 120 litres of water on its own.
And so all of that is underground water?
Yes, it's all from the Great Artesian Basin. Coal seam gas mining is our single greatest threat. Gas is very much the outdated technology. It's a filthy industry. Now, we put in a 99.97 kilowatt solar system, which is as big as you can go before you become industrial, because we need to A, get our carbon footprint down, but also B, we need to control our energy costs. There's hundreds and hundreds of jobs created through renewable and sustainable jobs versus questionable job numbers in the gas industry.
I've seen the castle many times, and I don't think we could have, you know, a better pin-up boy for our campaign than Michael Caton. You know, the themes and the essence and the vibe of the castle that he brings to the fight is so transferable and so applicable to what we're trying to do here.
It's become a magnet for me, I must admit, to give a helping hand to anyone who needs to fight big business or whatever.
We don't know how this is all going to end, whether the Narrabri gas project will get the big tick. We're waiting anxiously for a decision later in the year.
It's exactly 30 years ago today that we met.
Wow.
Is it? Exactly to the day.
Michael has led a long, incredible, boisterous, complicated life. He's done everything in his power, I would say, to shorten his life, and he's still with us.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
I just really notice that I'm losing memory, vocabulary.
You should cut it and make a wish.
I've got to work twice as hard as I used to. Probably 3 times as hard as I used to, especially if you get a big page of dialogue.
Michael's mum lived to 103.
Dad's getting to that time in life where every few weeks another one of his mates is gone, another star has blinked out. And I think that's really left Dad with, I'm going to make the most of the time I have.
Largest knife and twice as beautiful.
I have become an unlikely grandfather at 77. I've had a dream run. And I think young Beckett is going to have a much harder road to hoe. And I'd rather not leave him with a poisoned landscape.
Michael's going to leave us with some of the most incredible characters in, you know, the history of Australian cinema.
Cheers.
Cheers. And he's also going to leave us with a sense that the underdog can win.
How's the serenity, doll? Michael often says he's in the home straight now, but there's plenty of life left in him yet.